Welcome to a training video of the Export Deductions screen in PayPak Professional 4.0. This screen is used to create data files which would then be edited and imported as deduction entries, which is often done when creating year-to-date batches or importing deductions such as cell phone charges or cash shorts, where the amount deducted varies from pay period to pay period. So let's log in and show you how it works. The Export Deduction screen is found under the Export section of the menu between Export Gross Pay and Export Taxes. And these three screens work in a very similar fashion. Let's click on the Export Deductions button. And here is the screen. There are two main reasons why you would want to use this screen. Reason number one, maybe to do year-to-date batches. You have year-to-date batches to be done, and you need to get the totals for all or some of your deductions for previous periods. For example, you purchased PayPak in June of 2021. You've created some batches starting from June, but you do not have January to May information in PayPak. And that would affect your employee payslips. It would not show the correct year-to-date totals. So if you want to do that, you can create a year-to-date batch for the period January to May. If you'd purchased PayPak maybe in the middle of January or the middle of February or earlier in the year, and depending on the number of employees that you have, you could have gone back and created individual batches and matched them back to whatever you were using before to get your payroll calculations done. That can be time consuming. There can be a little rounding differences between the way tax was calculated or deductions were calculated between the old payroll system and PayPak. You can have lots of employees. You can have weekly paid employees. Some of our customers have 20, 50, 100, 200, 900 employees or more. Some have over 1,000 employees. So to go back and rekey individual batches for past periods, not only for the current year. Let's say that you started your business 2 years ago. You started in 2019. So you have a whole year's information for 2019 and for 2020 and the period from January to May of 2021. It would be too time consuming to enter those batches as individual batches in PayPak. Indeed, also, the tax rates may have changed since those batches were originally done. So what the year-to-date batches allow you to do is to get the totals that were calculated for those periods and key them in. And they go into a file, and that file is then imported into PayPak. And there are three types of files. You can import gross pay entries, you can import taxes, and you can import deductions. So that's for the gross pay. That's what the gross pay will do for you, and there is a separate video which will explain the details of creating year-to-date batches. The other reason you may want to use this screen is where you have deductions each pay period where the amount varies from employee to employee, such as cell phone charges or cash shorts. You have employees who are allowed to use company phones up to a certain limit, and anything over that they have to pay for. The cell phone bill comes in. Instead of having to go through a prepared batch and edit that batch, go to each employee, find the line, key in the amount, save the entry, and repeat that over and over again, you can get the totals for each person and place them into an import file, which this screen would create, and very quickly import it into a batch. It could also be for cashiers. If you have cashiers who work and each week there's a list of what was short, and you have a good number of cashiers, again, instead of entering the amounts individually while editing the batch, you export a data file, drop the amounts into that file. You can make an Excel spreadsheet, which is the easiest one of the formats that are available, although there are others, and you very quickly import the file. Much faster than having to do it, and more accurate than having to do it manually. So those are the two main reasons. There may also be cases where you are about to automate. So you're about to automate the cell phone charges, and your company, your IT department has some sort of system which is going to generate the file for you, but they need to know the format of the file. You could come to this screen and create a sample file and send it to your IT, and then they will know which fields have to be created in the file, and they would use that information so that the file could be automatically generated in future, in which case you can use any of the four export formats that we have. It doesn't have to be Excel, it could be a CSV, it could be a TXT file, but this file, along with the export gross pay, would allow you can send a sample of those files to your IT department, and they can generate those files for you automatically. So let's have a look at the layout of this screen, and then I'll show you how it works. We begin with the export from options. You can export the deductions from the employee deductions, which basically means that for each employee that you've selected, which are the ones in this list at present, the software will look at the employee's profile and copy the lines from their deductions into the data file. So if Carol Beavy has 3 deductions and Kerry Bryan has 2 deductions, and those are the only 2 employees that you selected, there will be 5 lines in that import file. 3 for Carol Beavy and 2 for Kerry Bryan. If the employee has no deductions, let's say David Bryan had no deductions, he would not appear, his name would not appear in that file at all. So that's the options when you're choosing employee deductions. And that utilizes these 3 panels here: the employees, the branches, and the accounts. If you're using the template, and you can use both together, we will not for the purpose of this demo, we'll be doing it separately. If you're using the template, none of this is used, and it gets the information from lines which you enter in this template section at the bottom. So if you were to come here and enter 1 deduction line or 2 deduction lines, let's say, you enter 2 deduction lines, when the file is created, there will be 2 entries for Carol Beavy, 2 entries for Kerry Bryan, and 2 entries for David Bryan. So let's put us back to employee deductions. That's the one we'll be using first of all. Next, we have the select options, which is used to select the employees. It's presently set at all employees, and there are 44 employees which are listed here. I could select by category, and then I get a list of categories here, and let's say I chose cooks. These are the 10 cooks who are in this payroll. Then I could choose maybe accounts clerk. There's no accounts clerk. Admin, there are 3 people in the admin category. And I can choose all of them or some of them or one of them according to whatever my preferences or whatever I need for this particular the ones I need for the import file, because you may not need all of the employees. The other option is department, and we have 2 departments here. There's the Oystins department with 24 employees, and there's a Watton Terrace department with 20 employees. Next you have my payroll set, which allows you to select from a variety of payroll sets. In this particular case, there's one at the bottom here called year-to-date test, which was specially created for the purposes of this demo, and that's the one we will go with. It contains 4 employees, as you see here. And for the employees, I can now select the ones I want, turn off what we don't want here. There's also a branches section. When I go to the branch, I could decide that I only want the deductions for a particular branch. So if I turn off these or some of these, I can get just the ones that I want. Same thing for the accounts. We'll get to that in a moment. Under the payroll set selection, there's an active checkbox here, so I can also select which employees are active and which are not. There's a format list, and there are 4 formats. There's 2 Excel formats, Excel 2007, Excel 2003, as well as comma separated CSV and tab delimited TXT. If you are going to be manually editing the file, I recommend the Excel formats. The CSV formats are not that easily human readable or human editable. It's very easy to make a mistake, and you put one character out of place and you will get errors which will cause the import to fail when you try to import the information, or it could be imported incorrectly, which may be worse than it failing. There are options though in Excel where you could view these files in Excel, edit them in Excel, and save them back in the CSV or TXT format. However, you have to be careful when using Excel, because if you have account numbers and you have a bank account number for deduction and that bank account number begins with a 0, Excel will often take it upon itself to treat the account number as a numeric number and strip the leading 0 from the front of the bank account number. So if the person's bank account number was 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is 6 digits, Excel would remove the leading 0, and then the account number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that deduction will not be processed by the bank because the bank will recognize it as an invalid account number, or it may even go to the wrong account in some cases. If there is a valid account number for that particular bank, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as opposed to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you have to be careful converting files, and indeed using Excel altogether with the account numbers when you're editing the files. Make sure that that is not a problem by checking your files carefully. There is an option to add data headers, which can be on or off. And you have to make sure that these options here for the format and the data headers, as well as the export columns, which we'll get to a little later, you have to make sure that when you import the file, the settings that you make here match the settings when you are importing the file. They have to match. You can't export an Excel and try to import that as a TXT. The two formats have to match. Under the Format options is a line processing option, and this is the difference between the year-to-date when you're adding new lines, or the cell phone and cash shorts scenario where you are filling existing lines. The fill existing lines means that the batch contains the lines with the deductions, such as the cell phone charges. The line is there, but it has a zero amount in it, and all you're going to be doing is filling in that existing line. This is a very important setting because it creates two different types. It can create two different types of files. When you choose Add New Lines, this is a list of columns in the file. Okay. When you choose Fill Existing Lines, it's a much shorter list of columns. So you get a different file essentially. Okay. And the templates will also change. Look at the template here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 columns. When I choose Add New Lines, it's very much expanded. Plenty more columns to fill out, because the Add New Lines is creating every line that's required for a deduction. The Fill Existing Lines is only creating the columns where you're going to enter information, the amounts for the most part, and other columns needed to identify or to match the line for the particular employee. Under that, we have a payment option, a payment number. It defaults to 1. Typically, you will have just one entry for a deduction in the import file. But let's say you were doing a year-to-date and you wanted to put all your year-to-date entries in one batch, which is very possible. You can enter year-to-date for 2019 and 2020, and even from January to May of 2021. They could conceivably be in one batch, and that batch has entries with different earning dates. So you can have, for each employee, 3 entries in the batch, in this year-to-date batch. Entry number 1 is for 2019, entry number 2 is for 2020, and entry number 3 is for 2021. And those entries are matched by a payment number. So when you create this file, this import deductions file, and you put the payment number as 1, these will be imported to match the first entry. And if you created another file with the payment number set to 2, those entries will be imported for entry number 2, and so on for entry number 3. It could also be a case where you are doing a year, 2019, and you wish to have individual totals for each month. So the batch is for 2019, but you have 12 entries for each employee, and the 12 entries are 12 payment numbers. And again, you would create 12 files, and each file has a unique payment number to match back the month where you want to import these deductions too. So you've got quite a lot of flexibility here. The next section of the screen are these totals at the top. You've got totals for the employees, which is here. You've got totals for the branches, which is here. And you've got totals for the accounts, which is here in this third panel. These panels can be moved independently of each other. Now, if I click on the employees, you notice there's a little asterisk here, and I can turn on or off people from here. If I click on the branches, I can turn on or off particular branches. Remember, this is coming from the employee profile, these branches here. If I click on the accounts, I can turn off particular accounts, which I don't want entries that go to those accounts being added to the file. Now, as I move from grid to grid, from employees to branches to accounts, the asterisk shows the grid I last visited. You'll notice the totals up here at the top have changed. Now, at the bottom of the screen, there are three buttons: all, none, and invert. I last was at the accounts grid. So if I click invert, it inverts the entries, the selections that were made there. If I click none, it sets them all to none. If I click all, it sets them to all. When I move to the branches grid, again, when I click invert, it updates the branches. When I click none, it updates the branches again. And if I click all, there you go. Same thing for the employees. Invert, none, all. So these three buttons are linked to whichever grid carries the asterisk. They will operate on whichever grid of these three grids, not the export columns, that works differently. They will operate on which of these three columns shows the asterisk. The employees grid, as I said before, shows the employees, and you can turn on or off the ones that you want. The branches is a list of the authorities and branches for which there may be deductions for the employees. And the accounts is the list of accounts tied to the deduction lines in the employee deduction profile. The export columns, we are set at the fill existing lines. Let's go back to add new lines. Okay, so when you have to add new lines, these are the full range of columns. I can turn on or off any of these options in here. There's some which you should not turn off, or you cannot turn off. I can't turn off the employee name. I can't turn off the description. Can't turn off the employee ID or the employee number or the payment. That will automatically list here. The branch ID I can turn off. The calculation method, some of these I can turn off. Now when they're turned off, what that means is, and I would want the branch ID because I need to know the branch ID is this code here in this case. If I don't tick that, the file will be created with that column blank. Turning on or off the column doesn't remove or add it to the export file. The column would still be in the file. Okay? It's just that if I say payment method, let's say that's the only one I turned off, the payment method, and the amount, right? You may not need the amount depending on what I'm doing. If I were to choose amount, whatever the current amount is for the deduction line will be filled in this column in the data file. If I turn it off, the data file is created, but 0 goes into that column. Because remember, you are primarily creating this for the purpose of editing the amounts and importing them into PayPak. If you wanted the amount that is in the employee profile, you wouldn't have much need to edit it because it's already in the batch when you create the batch. So we're turning off the amount, and let's say we turn off the payment method. If I do that, the file will be created and these two fields will be empty, and I can change that to whatever I want when I'm doing the import, or I could default it when I'm importing the deductions. So I'm going to turn everything off except the amount in this case. Now, as I pointed out earlier, we have two options to export from, which is the employee deductions and the template. The template is down here, and these ones here control the employee deductions. So that's two options there. You also have four options here: the Excel 2007, the Excel 2003, the comma separated, and the tab delimited. So if I showed you everything, that would be 8 options in total. But then there's also two other options here for adding new lines and filling existing lines. And if I showed you every possible combination, that would be 16 files. I want to keep the demo brief, so we will export we'll create two sets of files, but we won't go to every possible option. So we'll create some files which are for the add in new lines, and we'll create some which are for the fill existing lines. Okay, so we add new lines. At this point, this would create that file for me. So we've got our 4 employees, we've got all of these, we've got all of these. Let's click on export, and this is going to the import taxes folder. I don't want it there. Let's put it to the import deductions, and we save it. And this is deductions, add new lines. Now I'm going to edit this file and put in there the word employee, so that I know these are the ones that came from the employee deductions, because I want to be able to compare I want you to see the content of the file as opposed to the template one, which will by default carry the same name. So this is for your benefit. I'll just click there, and it's processing, and it is finished. There's Excel 2003. I can export that. Same thing. Save that. And that is done. Then we have comma separated. That's done. And we have tab delimited. That's the last. And again, that is done. So at this point, we should have 4 files, and these are the 4 files that were created. The Excel one, 2007, the Excel 2003, the CSV, and the TXT. That's 4. Now, those are the ones using the employee deductions. Let's go now to the template. I'll turn this off. It's possible for you to take information from the employee deductions and combine it with a template line, but we're doing separate files for the purposes of this demo. So for the template, I now have to add a new line in here. And let's say we were adding a deduction for just the cell phone charges alone. or maybe an authority that's not in there or something, some new authority maybe. You would come in here and fill out the information that you need. I'm going to choose in this case cell phone charges one. I'll do the cell phone charges and I'll do the cash shorts. Although in this case, let's say the cash shorts went to Wadden Terrace. Okay, good. In this case, we will just have these two. We're using the calculation method there. We're not going to fill in an amount. I could have filled in an amount if the amount was flat. If it was a flat amount that everyone had to pay the same thing, I could have done that. There's some other options here. The payment method, I would say other in this case. The account number may vary where the account number is the same. Let's say that was the account number. Okay, that's the reference you use for your account number. And let's say for the cash shorts, the account number that you use here, this is not the GL account number, this is the account reference number for the deductions. And let's say you put shorts. This is the reference that appears on the payslip, basically. And let's say the GL account, this was going to, this is which one? The cell phone charges. Cell phone charges. We have, I think, an account for cash shorts. Good. So that's what I want for my template. What will happen here is for each employee selected, which is 4 employees, they will have these 2 lines added to the batch when it's imported. So I can now export these in the same manner as I did before. So I've got Excel 2007, I export, and this time I will say template to differentiate between the one that was there before. So there's my template file being created. I say OK to that. I want Excel 2003. Export. Again, template. I save that. In real life, you would not be creating all 4 formats. You only need to create the one which you decide to go with. And as you can see, it doesn't take too long. So that's the CSV. And we have the tab delimited. And we export that. And template. And there you go. So that's created 4 more files. Now, these are the 4 files which were created. So let me move this across a little bit here. The template ones are here at the bottom, and the employee ones are here. Now let's just open these files and have a look at them to compare the layout. The employee ones, I'll open that. Just open the LibreOffice, and there are the lines. And let's open the template one and just dock this over here, and we'll put the employee ones over there. So this is the ones which comes from the employee profiles. Okay, and there are 16 lines, and this is the one which comes from the template, and there are 8 lines. The format is exactly the same. You've got the employee name, the description. The little asterisk indicates that that is not a field for import. That's just there for navigational guidance purposes, so that you know who it is that you are creating the entry for. When it's matching the lines and importing, it uses the employee ID. So that has to be a valid ID. You can come here and insert more lines and fill out information. You can remove lines, you can change information, but you have to be very careful that for some columns the information, the code you enter is valid information, is a valid branch ID. For example, the payment number in this case must be a payment number in the batch. It can import using the employee ID or the employee number. In this particular case, the employee numbers of this database, it doesn't use employee numbers, so there's only employee ID, but it needs either or both. They can't be blank when you try to import. If we scroll across, you'll see the other information in there. And if I scroll across, I can see it in here as well. What would then happen is you would come in here and fill in the amount. So if this was your cell phone charges, let's say this person was $152.36. Let's widen that a bit. You were $152.36. Your shorts were $11.25. Your cell phone charges were $124. Your shorts were $29.75. Cell phone charges $113.63. Shorts $102. Cell phone charges $42.38. And cash shorts $5. Right. So that's what you do. You key that in, and that, as you can see, will be much quicker than having to go to the individual entry for the person, for each employee, and edit it, especially if you have a large number of employees. This file, this can be saved and it's ready for import. Let's check, see if there are any account numbers. There are no account numbers in here, which GL account numbers or account numbers which began with a 0. Just checking it there. These are references. And the same thing would happen with the other file over here for the deductions. This is for Sagicor Life. So if you were doing a year-to-date batch, the totals in here would be the totals. Let's say you wanted, this was a year-to-date batch for 2019. The total amount in here would be the total deductions to Sagicor Life and Bridgetown for 2019. So if it was 4,125.52, that's what you put in, and so on and so forth. You would fill out the amounts in that column, and that's how the files will be edited. I'll just save this, and I will now, let's close these two. And let's have a look at the other formats, the CSV formats. This is the common server. Let's just drag this window out of the way so we get a little better look at it here. I want to dock this. So this is the one for the employee, and the CSV for the template is here. Dock that there, and you can see again the two files side by side. The one from the employee has far more entries. The one from the template has only the lines which we added, the 8 lines plus the line for the header. As you can clearly see, this is not the preferred or first choice for a human readable or human editable file. This is for machines. It is very difficult to edit a file like this. It's not impossible, but it's not the speediest. You wouldn't be able to edit this in any speedy manner going through the columns like I did just now in the Excel spreadsheet. This is for machines. So this is the format. That's the CSV format. We also have the TXT format. Just let me find those files in a moment. I've got them on my other screen. Let's just find where I place them. Okay, we have the employee for the tab delimited format. Okay, where the information is separated by tabs. It's maybe a little easier to look at, but again, this is not your first choice for editing. There's also the TXT for the deductions, which is here, the one that came from the template. So this is the template one here, and in the background there's the one which came from the employees. So files are there, they can be created, but you'd probably, if you're editing it manually, Excel is probably the best choice for you. It is possible to use this. You could copy a line and paste it in if you know what you're doing. Remove lines that you don't need, that type of thing. But you have to be very, very careful if you're manually editing any sort of text file, whether it's comma separated or tab delimited. Okay, so I'll close these, and let's now look at, let me close this and close this, and let's have a look now at the option for filling existing lines, where you would have the line set up in the batch already with zeros in it, and this could be for cell phone charges, and again it could come from the template, or it can come the template down here, or it could come from the employee deductions. By the way, where did my template lines go? Okay, I don't know what happened there. Something I must have touched something, because I'm sure we had the line in there for that. Anyway, let's start with the template. If you're filling existing lines, chances are that you know what it is you're filling. So there are two ways of achieving that. You could, if I wanted cell phone charges, for example, if I use the employee deductions, all I need to do is pick that particular authority, which I think is this one here, Big D Pizza cell phone charges. So I turn everything else off. I turn everything off and just tick this one. And when I do that, that's all I need to create a file which will have the deductions for Big D's for these 4 employees. And I could also come to the accounts, and there's one account in here for cell phone charges. I'll just do a quick invert. All right, so I could do this as well. If for some reason the account was incorrectly set for a particular employee and it was not set to cell phone charges, it will not get imported into the file because those other accounts have been filtered out. So using this option, I could create that file for a list of cell phone charges. But if, and that's provided that the lines were set up in the employee profiles. Remember, fill existing lines, the line must be set up in the employee profile or in the batch. Because you could have, if it wasn't in the employee profile, but you added it in the batch manually without putting in a figure, this would still work for that employee. The other option would be if you use the template and you fill in the information for the cell phone in here, which would go something like this. I would choose the payment, I would choose cell phone charges there. The account number, I will just put cell phone charges. And this is an important point, because if you're using the template, they will all carry this reference. If the reference needs to be different for each employee and it's set up in the employee profile, then it may be better to use this option and get the lines from the file from the employee deductions. I'm not going to fill out any amounts in this case for the template. So those are the two options, and I can export the file. I'm going to export it as the employee deductions using Excel. So we export there, and this is deductions, fill existing lines, and I will say employee again to differentiate. And it's finished. And now I'm going to do the template one. I don't need the employee deductions, which will bring this line for each of the employees. And I export, and I'll just put the word template so that I know where it originated from. And that is created. So now let's have a look at the files. These are the files for filling. These two files here at the bottom. Okay, these two right here. So let's open them. Let's look at the employee one. And let's look at the template one. Let's move the employee one. Let's get this out of the way. Here is the, let's dock these. I like to put my things in a particular order. Right. So here is the file which came from the fill existing lines for employee deductions. And it looks like it did not filter out everything else, but the other lines, there's some other lines in there. I'm seeing Sagicor in there. I'm seeing Big D. The template has the lines only for the cell phone charges, whereas this other one does not. Just let me look back at that, because I'm fairly sure, we have to look into that when you are doing the, as I said, it has the branches, this branch here only, the other branches are not selected. So we'll need to look into this a bit and check our code settings, either for this one or that one, because clearly something there is not as it should be, but that will be fixed by the time that you are using this for real. So let's go back to the file there. It has the lines in it, the two files. The format will be the same as before. There are less columns in these fill files where you're filling the existing lines than there are when you are adding brand new lines. And again, columns which are not needed in the file will have an asterisk. They're just there to let you know who the entry is for. And in this case here, I could go to my cell phone charges and I can put that this person had $52.21. This person had $12.41. Yours was $129 and yours was $102. That's it. Then this file, I can save it, and it's ready for import. Same thing here. I could come in and edit this as well. Now, in this case, when I chose the employee deductions to fill, I did not remove the amounts for the employee and the employer. They're still there. I can easily come here, set these to 0. I can fill it out. Oops, sorry. Fill down. I don't want to copy. I want to fill down. Okay, I can clear those amounts out quite easily. Edit. There's the fill in here. Let's just copy and paste them all. Let's copy and paste these. So you can work on this just like any other Excel spreadsheet. I could have sorted it and removed, if I did not want those the other entries other than the cell phone charges. Okay, if I only wanted those, I could have sorted this and remove those lines. So I could have come here and deleted the lines that I don't need. Delete rows. Okay, and in QuickTime I have the equivalent of the file on the right. Delete rows. See? They'll be exactly the same. I could work with that. I can add more lines. So in the same way, I could have come here. I could copy these, and I could paste them in here. And this could be maybe a different authority branch. Put a different branch ID and enter the amounts for them in there as well. So you've got lots of flexibility. As I said, the Excel is the best option for editing the files manually. Make your changes, add or remove as necessary, save it, and import it. And that, I believe, brings this demo to a close. There's some other options I want to show you before I close off. The buttons at the bottom. The new button will clear the screen. Goes back to how it was originally. We've seen the all, none, and invert, where it relates to the grid with marked by the asterisks. The settings button will save your preferences for export from, for the selection option, the format, and the option to add data headers or not, as well as your line processing option, which is very important. You can default it to add new lines or fill existing lines. It also saves the position of these dividers between the panels, because you may have some columns that are narrower than others that don't need to be so wide. You can bring them in accordingly. Sometimes the branch description is going to be quite long, and you can move the position of the template up or down for with the divider here. So the settings button will save the positions of these various screen elements. The reset button will clear the settings, and the refresh button will update various information on the screen, such as the categories, the departments, and the payroll sets, as indeed the employees and the branches and the accounts. Those will be refreshed when you click the refresh button. And the exit button closes the screen. As I mentioned earlier, this is one of 3 export functions in the software. There's export gross pay. There's also export taxes. And the files which are created in these 3 screens are imported using, in this case, the import deductions, as well as the import gross pay and the import taxes. They all have their own training videos, and I do recommend that you take a look at them. And there will also be a video on creating year-to-date batches. So until next time, please take care. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you and goodbye until next time.